Another week, another set of One Piece episodes. This time I'm here to talk about episodes 93 to 96. So for a brief recap, this is the arrival at Alabasta. We finally landed on the shores of the coast. Is that what you'd call it? I don't know. Basically, we're there, okay? We've spent some time there. The first episode was buying supplies. We ran into Smoker. We ran into Ace, and we got a lot of Ace stuff to talk about. And then the episodes end, basically, with them arriving at a destroyed town and then heading to the location of the rebel base, basically. So that's the set of episodes here. Miller the Killer has informed me that part of this is filler, especially that first episode, part of it is filler. I have no idea what is filler. If I were to guess, it'd probably be the stuff with Chopper, who kind of goes on his own adventure, but who knows? I'm not really sure. It all felt natural to me. But overall, this was B tier, you know? These were enjoyable. I like these quite a bit. Yeah, we'll talk about why. Now, the first thing to talk about is arriving at Alabasta, and pretty much it is what I have been saying consistently, I think in every arc of the Grand Line now. It feels very much like a completely different vibe, and I love it. I love the adventure element. I feel like I'm just going to be repeating this for every arc in the Grand Line, but I appreciate how different it feels, and that's just the best thing ever, so lovely. Like, there's new outfits like this, like Zoro's one. Oh my god, Zoro has the coolest outfit ever. I don't know, he just looks so cool in this, like, Alabasta outfit. I don't know, I really like it a lot. And the vibes are just different. If there's one thing that I will actually complain about, though, I think I have an image for this. It is this, which is that every episode now we get a map at the beginning, which I appreciate. I like the map. I don't know if it's necessarily needed because it is quite a simple map, but the big problem I have is that, oh my goodness, this map makes Alabasta feel unbelievably like hollow and empty, because it's like, it's so like, there's nothing here. There's three like little cities and they look tiny on this little map. Now, when I first saw this, I assumed it was just like, you know, it's like a part of Alabasta, like a very small section, like maybe it was like 5% of Alabasta. But apparently it's the entirety of Alabasta, at least according to where it says Alabasta Kingdom or Arabasta Kingdom at the top left. So I don't know. If anyone out there knows, well, I guess there's no real need to clarify. I'm sure I'll figure out eventually. But yeah, I'm a little concerned that this is the entirety of Alabasta, which is a little bit of a disappointment of like, oh, I was hoping it to be more grand. But I guess it really is just entirely the map, though. Like, when I'm at Alabasta, like, walking around and stuff, it feels big, you know? Like, these cities look big. I don't know, it's a little, like, I don't know. I don't like the map, though. But anyway, that's Alabasta, good vibe. I like it. Kind of cool. Yeah. Now, what we get at the beginning, like I said, is that we get 3 different storylines, which are very minorly like kind of addressed. It's not like crazy anything major like differences or anything like that. Like not someone progresses drastically in the story while others don't. But yeah, in the first episode we have Luffy, who basically gets lost and he goes on his own and he winds up at some person's house in the middle of the desert, and that person introduces him to the dance powder, which is the whole like impetus to the rebellion, but he doesn't know that at this point. Basically, we're learning here at this point about the dance powder, which is this cloud seeding powder stuff. It's interesting. I think we'll talk about it more when we get to the grand conspiracy segment of these slides, but yeah, that's what Luffy's doing. It is interesting. Like, I can't tell. It is interesting where, like, now that I know these are filler, or like this episode specifically has some filler in it, I don't know if this is like the filler bit or not, because it like ties in exactly to the rest of the overarching story. Yet like it's very useful to have like an establishment of like what this powder is, and like see Luffy try and eat it and everything and see it in effect. So I feel like this probably isn't filler, but it was good, so I liked it regardless. But we have that. Then we have well, I guess there's one more thing to say in that like kind of storyline with Luffy, which is that he has a moment where the guy is basically like, oh, that powder, that was my dream. And then Luffy, as soon as he hears that, he like bows to him and he respects him or whatever. So it is like a reiteration of like, Luffy really does care a lot about like other people's dreams, you know? So something to keep in mind. Like whenever I think of it in the future, like, oh, does Luffy actually care about dreams? This is one go-to piece of evidence. So yeah. But that's Luffy's storyline, really not much to it. But then there's like the majority of the rest of the crew who stays behind hidden, basically, because they don't want to be found out by Mr. 3, or Mr. 3's ship that is apparently at Alabasta. Now, I actually am not sure what's going on here. I'm sure it is very clear if I was like, if I remembered all my notes correctly and remembered my past few weeks of watching, but my understanding is that the last time we saw him, he was just randomly like left on, like we don't really know what happened to him, but he was left on Little Garden. And then Bon Clay was going to kind of go and kill him or go and find him basically. And the last time we saw Bon Clay, I think he was still heading to Little Garden. So I don't exactly know if it's like a fake ship or he actually somehow got here and he's going to be like a part of it, or it's like a filler thing entirely and it's like not canon. I don't know. Now I feel like I'm being really dumb right now and there's like a really obvious answer here, but I'm just not remembering it. So yeah, Mr. 3 ship was there. But anyway, they're just staying hidden for the majority of the time. Zoro, Nami, Vivi, Usopp. Sanji and Chopper are the third storyline, and they're basically going to shop for supplies and stuff because Mr. 3 doesn't know their identities. So Sanji is kind of irrelevant here. He goes and shops, but Chopper goes on the storyline that I mentioned before, where he basically gets unintentionally kidnapped by the rebels of Alabasta, like the people working under Crocodile, seemingly. And, well, do they work under Crocodile? I actually haven't pieced this together, because Vivi wants to go to the rebels because she wants to tell them that Crocodile is kind of responsible for all the bad stuff. I guess it would be indirect, right? They don't know about the intervention of Baruch Works. So the rebels are kind of like working, but they're also being manipulated, right? Anyway, regardless, but I'm getting distracted. But Chopper gets kidnapped by them, and then he has this whole very funny kind of resolution of that, which is that he pretends there's a dead deer in the back of the truck, and they think that they just bought like a piece of dead like meat they were going to eat or whatever. But then Chopper sneaks out and like hides with a camel, like under the cover that it's on a camel, and he like talks to the camel and convinces the camel to like get him out of there, and the camel's like, yeah, I'll do it because I'm cool. And it was funny, so I like that. I kind of hope this is canon and referenced one day. We get this camel back one day. But yeah, you know, what can I say? Oh my god, Chopper's ability to talk to animals has come back in the story already and has served the purpose. So I'm very happy. So we like that. But yeah, that's the three kind of initial storylines at Alabasta, like the arriving at Alabasta section. We also have we have the reintroduction of Smoker and Tashigi, who have been very briefly mentioned throughout this Grand Line saga so far. But they finally show up, they meet our crew, they have a bunch of interactions, there's a really cool fight we'll talk about. But yeah, that's another thing that's happening at our arrival at Alabasta. Another thing I realized is that I really like Tashigi. She is a lot of like, I think very positively were in my mind, especially because of her interactions with Zoro. So I'm excited to see those two interact again. Oh my goodness. I ship them, you know? But yeah, anyway. That's that. Okay, I don't have too much to say about arriving at Alabasta. The next thing to say is about Ace here. Oh my goodness. We meet him. He is Portgas D. Ace. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But oh my goodness, he has the D in his name, which makes sense because, oh my god, he is Luffy's brother. I was unbelievably close somehow, like uncannily close. I don't know how. I mean, I guess he did look like Luffy, and I made that connection that I thought he was his dad. But no, he is in fact his brother. When they announced that he was his brother in this episode, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's like a symbolic brother or whatever. Like maybe it's like because Luffy is like a fellow pirate on the sea. He's like no, but it's literally his brother. At least I think it's reiterated a bunch of times in these episodes. So yeah. But the funny thing also is that now that we've seen his full face and we see like close-ups of him and everything, I don't think he looks that much like Luffy anymore. So yeah, it is funny how I made the connection that it looked like him last episode when we could hardly see his face, but now we see him, I don't really stand by it anymore. But who knows? Regardless, they are related. Yeah. There's like a few interesting things. One is that it's like, we learned that Ace left the island that Luffy grew up on 3 years before Luffy did, which is interesting. That implies that all the flashbacks we've seen, and what I've read in that first chapter or two in the manga, all of that is within the 3 years after Ace has left. Because as far as I understand, as far as I remember, I don't remember him being mentioned whatsoever. I don't remember seeing Ace whatsoever, any hint of him, so it must be like after those 3 years, or in those 3 years afterward. But yep, that's the first thing to mention. Then there's the thing to mention, which is there's the letter D in his name, right? Which is Gold Roger has the Gold D Roger. Luffy has Monkey D Luffy, and then Ace has Portugas D Ace. Now, this is something that I was streaming the other day on YouTube, and then Miller the Killer was actually in my chat. But don't get too excited if you're like a One Piece fan. You're like, oh, go check out Ari's stream. He talks about One Piece. I don't really talk about One Piece on stream, okay? It's a very rare thing. But Miller mentioned that last time in the set of episodes, they talked about the Will of D or something like that. I actually don't remember if it was called exactly that, but they mentioned, Dr. Reen mentioned that, and he asked me on stream, what do I think that was? And the rapid conclusion that I came to is that, oh, maybe it's like the original source of like pirates, or like the myth of pirates. Like we have Blackbeard in our world, or Davy Jones in our world, or whatever. D is like that scary myth of like a scary pirate on the seven seas or whatever back in the actual One Piece world. Now, I don't know if any of that is true whatsoever. It's based in pretty much nothing at all, except the fact that Luffy kind of seems to emulate Gold Roger, and Gold Roger has a D in his name, and maybe the D comes from someone else. But regardless, Ace also has the D in his name, which might mean it is literally just a family name. And we are leading to like there's no way. Like, what this implies to me is that it's like, oh, I guess like Gold Roger's their dad or something like that, right? Personally, I don't know how the ages line up. Like, I'm pretty sure that, oh my god, I've forgotten his name. It's not Ace. That's the guy here. The guy, the original Straw Hat guy. How did I forget his name? Luffy's like dad, quote unquote. Shanks. Oh my god. Ace just like replaced him in my head. It's like, oh, Ace. That's like the father figure to Luffy, but he's his brother. It's not even a father figure. Anyway, Shanks. I'm pretty sure he was very young, because at least I remember in the live action, we saw him at the execution site of Gold Roger. So he must have been much younger back then, which would mean that like Gold Roger's probably too old to be like Luffy's dad, and I don't know. But that is like the most cliche kind of approach of like what that D would mean, right? But it doesn't, it just feels too impossible. Like there's no way that it would be that obvious of a thing. So I think it is all just like, there was Ace, there was Luffy, they were both inspired to become pirates, both inspired by Gold Roger, they both wanted to take the D in his name. That's probably what it is, that's my guess. But yep, Portagas, D Ace. I feel like we'll never hear this name again, we'll probably just call him Ace going forward. But yep. The other thing he is called as is Fire Fist Ace, because he has eaten the... Now, it depends on if you watch the sub or the dub. The flare fruit is what they called it in the sub. And then I was reading my notes when I was trying to compile my like notes for this actual like recording. And I was like, did they really call it that? Did I like make a typo? Was it actually flame fruit or something? And I went back and it is the flare fruit. They write that in the subs. And then I was like, what? Let me see what the dub says. And the dub says flame fruit. So I don't know what's going on there, but there's two interpretations. But basically he ate a fruit that turns his body into flames. Just like Smoker ate a fruit that turns his body into smoke. And they have a big fight and it's like interesting. We like it. But yeah. I don't know. There's not much to say. Like he is just, it's a cool, like it's one of the cooler kind of powers that we've seen. Well, I don't know if I'd necessarily say cool. It's one of the most like pretty like straightforward powers that we've seen. He literally just turns into flames, and flames are strong. You know, they're also dangerous and they're also cool. So Ace comes across as cool. But yeah, what else is there to say? There was a moment where Ace invited Luffy to the Whitebeard Pirates group. Because, we also, I guess I should say this, we learned that Fire Fist Ace is the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. So Whitebeard is a name that I've heard of before. I know what he looks like, I think now, because we'll talk about it. But he basically, he invites Luffy to join. He invites Luffy and his entire crew, and Luffy turns him down. But it was very cute. It's like, oh, look at this. Like, Whitebeard is willing to accept all these people, and Ace is willing to accept even Luffy's crew. It's not like he's very selective of only really liking Luffy. Himself is really cool. But what I learned in this moment is that we get a brief flash of, like, what Whitebeard looks like, and I realized he is the One Piece. The One Piece is real. He's that guy. I'm like 95% sure from the meme. If you don't know the meme, I don't know where you've been living for the past, like, 5 years. But yeah. So that implies, like, there is a lot that I can, like, piece from that, from the just the meme. There's one thing I know, which is that the guy in the meme, who I'm pretty sure is Whitebeard, I'm pretty sure that is the scene where he dies. Like, that is what the meme is known for. It's like that character dies and he's like announcing the One Piece is real or whatever. So that's one thing. The second thing is that there was like a bunch of characters at that moment. Like, I remember there's like a shot of like Chopper like crying or whatever. So it's like Chopper's gonna be there, like when Whitebeard dies or whatever. Oh my god, I'm getting choked up and my voice is going for some reason. But that's another thing. I know, like I've said the past few recordings, I know the power that Whitebeard has, because people who watch JJK and they keep talking about, they compare like a bunch of characters or one character in JJK to the power that Whitebeard has. So I know that power, which is like spoilers if you don't know anything about One Piece, but the ability to like manipulate the sky or whatever, something like that. From this, I can also tell that just from that, like the One Piece is real. Maybe it's like he's a legendary pirate who is like, maybe Whitebeard is the closest who has ever gotten to the One Piece. Maybe he saw the One Piece but was dragged away for some reason and he could never actually get to it or something like that. And in that dying moment, he's like announcing to everyone in the world that, oh my god, don't give up on the hope. Like the One Piece is real or something like that. So anyway, basically because of my being spoiled by this meme that is basically impossible to avoid, I think anyone who is a person on the internet has almost certainly seen that scene. Yeah, there's a lot that I can imply from that. So yeah, but Whitebeard, true. He is a 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, Ace is. My final kind of note on Ace specifically is that Ace seems cool, is probably the best way to describe it. You know, he has this cool, like his hands are in his pockets, he's got the flames, which are cool. He like goes and has a really cool action scene where he's like destroying all the billions of ships. Yeah, I hope he stays around a bit. I like him, generally. I am kind of surprised that he has kind of actually stayed around a bit. I thought it was going to be like a brief interaction, and then maybe we'll see him like much later or something like that, and he'll come back into the story when Luffy, like they get split different ways or something like that. But no, he's there. He's following the rest of the crew and Vivi on her mission, for now at least, and I hope he stays around. The final kind of Ace-related thing to say is that we also learned about Blackbeard, and apparently Blackbeard was someone who is serving under Ace, which is very funny. If I would have assumed that Blackbeard was like this legendary pirate on his own, right? Like maybe next to Whitebeard or something like that. But not only is he not that, but he's not even directly under Whitebeard. He's directly under the guy who was directly under Whitebeard. So, and just this guy, like Luffy's brother. And so Blackbeard really isn't that big of a deal, I guess, technically. Or at least he wasn't at the point that he left. Like, and like, what we learn is that he killed one of his crewmates, who was one of, not Shanks, one of Ace's, like people under Ace. And he ran away after that. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's Maybe it's, I can't tell if it's like my lack of pirate knowledge that for some reason I have this legend of Blackbeard built up in my mind as though Blackbeard is like the craziest pirate of all time. Maybe it's like built up through like me watching Black Sails and stuff. And I don't know, maybe is he in SpongeBob? I don't know. But yeah, it seems that at least in this story, Whitebeard is, so far at least, the most dangerous, scariest pirate that we've seen, besides obviously Gold Roger, I guess. So it's interesting. Yeah, but that's all I've got on Ace. The final kind of section of stuff I want to talk about is the Grand Conspiracy. And I have very little to talk about this, but essentially we learn a little bit more about like how the rebellion and how the civil war in Alabasta started. And we learned that essentially the king, at least according to Vivi, was framed as importing this dance dust, or whatever what was it called? The dance powder, sorry, which is the artificial cloud seeding powder. And what that implied to the citizens who lived in Alabasta was that, oh my god, the miraculous rain that is happening in the capital city is because the king is using this dance powder selfishly on his own city, and all the rest of the clouds around the rest of Alabasta are being sucked into the city, and everyone else is in a drought because of it. And they all blame the king, and that's how the Civil War kind of started. So this is interesting. I think, firstly, Ace suggests that Crocodile's motive might be a bit more than we're kind of expecting, in that he probably isn't trying to become the king of Alabasta because he is a pirate and he probably doesn't like to stay in one place or whatever. So that's the first thing to kind of keep in mind. But I feel like the most obvious, like this is almost certainly what it is, but I guess I could be completely wrong. It feels like what's happening here is that this is a grander conspiracy about the world government who is collaborating with Crocodile. I don't exactly know what Crocodile really wants. Like, I don't understand his motives, but I would assume that the plan here is that the world government basically wants to destabilize Alabasta and put someone in control who they think could be more reliable. Maybe they think, maybe the world government is like a very corrupt government or something like that, and in reality, the king of Alabasta is too good of a person. Like, he's someone that they can't really necessarily have push the agendas that they want him to push, right? They'll probably want to replace him with someone else. That's what I assume is happening here. Mainly, the main reason making me think this is that we get like a whole thing about how the dance, what's it called? The dance powder was outlawed by the world government, which makes it seem like the way that it gets described is that they did it for a noble cause, where it's like, oh, they kind of did it because it was causing war between nations or whatever. But you could also read it as like they monopolized the powder so that they can stoke civil war like this. So I don't know, that's my theory at the moment. The world government is kind of responsible for this, and they're doing it in collaboration with Crocodile, and they're doing it to destabilize and basically undermine the rule of the king and replace him with like some other puppet leader, right? But I guess we'll see. But that is the Grand Conspiracy. Oh, I have another image here. So there we go. Crocodile. I hope you enjoy. But now we just have my miscellaneous notes. The first thing to say is that we got our first, as far as I remember, I don't remember any other fan service basically in the show. I believe this shot right here is the first notable, like semi-plausibly deniable, like it might not be fan service, but this is, I looked at it and it showed up for a brief second. I was like, oh my goodness, One Piece is doing fan service. This is crazy. We're getting a close-up shot of Nami's boobs, which was a bit unnecessary, but it was here. Now, the only reason I bring this up is that obviously I've heard over the years of like hearing about One Piece that, well, it's interesting. I feel like I've heard that One Piece has like a lot of fan service, which has not been my experience so far. It's not that I remember at least. But the other thing I know is that there's like a meme that Nami's boobs get bigger over time or whatever, or maybe she like dresses more like, what's the word? Less conservatively or whatever as time goes on, which has not been my experience at all in One Piece so far. Like Nami seems like a very, like, there is no, like, she's wearing like normal clothing. It's not like her figure is like kind of weirdly like exaggerated or anything like that, except for like her tiny waist, I guess, but like whatever, that's just like a character design in One Piece. I don't know. The reason I bring it up is that I wonder if this is the start of something where we're going to get a lot more of this. I don't know. Or maybe my understanding of like what the fan service in One Piece is just like wildly distorted by people just talking about fan service in a bad way. But anyway, that's that. Here's another shot of them wearing the outfits that Sanji bought them. It is very funny. Again, like I said, it is like plausibly deniable fan service where it's like, I understand why they're showing it in the narrative, right? It is a funny gag of like Sanji bought them these outfits because obviously he wants to look at their bodies and stuff like that, right? Because he's Sanji. His whole thing is like about lusting for women. But yeah. Anyway, that's that. What other images do I have? Oh, just another one in the clothing. But miscellaneous. What else have I got? We also get a reaction shot, which I really like, which is that during the Luffy Smoker fight, which is a crazy fight where like Luffy is running and stretching his arms and Smoker's doing a bunch of smoke and stuff, and they run up a building or whatever. We get a reaction shot from the crowd who is like freaking out. They're like, oh my God, like people with powers are fighting. And I'm like, oh, I appreciate it. You know, it feels like there's chaos here and people are scared because they're not used to like people with powers like fighting. It was kind of cool, so I like that. Oh, another thing that's happening is that at the beginning of the three most recent episodes that I've seen, there is like a narrator who has been introduced who is doing a recap of what happened in the previous episode. not the worst thing in the world. I actually kind of appreciate it, where I'm like, oh, like that, yeah, this is summarizing like the important stuff that I should have paid attention to. But it is new, and it has been for 3 episodes in a row, and it kind of feels like I assume this is going to be the new normal, where for the rest of this entire arc, we are probably going to have a narrator that's going to consume the first like minute of the episode now, just giving us a recap, which is probably a bit unnecessary, but I kind of appreciate it at the same time. This is a thing that I believe was also happening in Dragon Ball Super, I think. I know at some point he got kind of crazy with Dragon Ball Super, where like they would have a recap, then they'd have the opening, and then after the opening, they'd have like a, here's what's going to happen in this episode. They summarize the events of the episode in like 30 seconds. I'm like, why are we doing this? So I hope that doesn't happen in this, but I don't know. I appreciate watching these recaps at least so far, but they're a bit, I don't know. I'm a little worried that hopefully they don't get longer and stuff, but it's a thing that's happening. Another thing is that I had a random thought of like, what happens when you eat 2 devil fruits? Like what if Luffy were to eat the flame fruit? Can he like stretch his arms and like become flames? Or does it like replace your existing devil fruit? Or maybe it like does nothing. Maybe you can only have 1. I don't know. I don't know if this is being touched on. I've just forgotten about it, but it's an interesting question I just thought of. Another thing we learn is that Luffy wants his next crewmate to be a musician. So that's who he's searching for. Now, the only other crewmate that I know, like named crewmate, besides the skeleton person, who I'm pretty sure, I feel like is a crewmate, but I'm not certain, is Nico Robin. So is Nico Robin going to be like a musician? Is that going to be a thing? I don't know. That's my guess. There's also a new ED, which is entirely Chopper focused. I don't really like it. It's not very good. I don't think I'll ever listen to it again. The music was fine, I think. The visuals were fine, but I'll probably just never watch it again. And then the final thing to say is that Karoo has been sent on his own storyline. So while everyone else is heading to the rebel base, Karoo has been sent with all the information that Vivi has written down about everything she's learned about Baroque works and the Civil War in Alabasta. And she has sent Karoo off to the king, or I think the king, somewhere basically, the head palace or something like that, so that the king can learn about all this. Now, my assumption of what's going to happen is that I think Nico Robin is probably going to intercept this, and it's going to lead to Crocodile kind of thwarting our plans that our Straw Hat crew has to kind of undermine his plans. So I think it is going to be a bad move that Vivi has made, sending Karoo on his own, or her own. I don't know Karoo's gender, but yeah. But that's it. That's this set of One Piece episodes. I am excited for the future of Alabasta. Miller the Killer has informed me that there is going to be more filler next time too. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks for watching. Subscribe right now and see you next time.